So hello everyone, good to see you. So I wanted to talk at the beginning of the session a little bit about something, a term that Sayadaw U Tejaniya uses, but I think is very common in early Buddhism. I don't have it. I don't have the Pali word for it at my fingertips. I've just realized as I'm sitting here. But the word is nature. He talks about nature. So I thought we could explore that a little bit today, what it means and what its use is in practice. And an example of its use, I've got a little quote from U Tejaniya, and he says, for example, sadness arises. It's a good object. And by that he means it's distinct, it's available and sort of interesting. It's a good object, but first you have to have the attitude to see it as nature, not my sadness or I'm sad. And then he goes on to say, if you're still identified and just aware, sadness will grow. So this is where he's saying awareness on its own isn't enough. And shorthand, I think nature is shorthand for right view. So knowing what's happening as a natural process, a process that's natural to the mind, whatever's occurring. So whatever is nature is dependent upon conditions. So it's part of a cause-effect process. And as with any cause-effect process, we don't have to know all the conditions, all the causes. The Buddha said that was impossible to do. It's not a linear process, a direct sort of causal process. But we understand that this, using Sayadaw's example, sadness is conditioned, or whatever it is conditioned, that is natural to the mind under certain circumstances. When certain conditions are there, then that mind state will be present. And they may be external conditions, internal conditions, but it's most likely going to be a combination of the two things that arise together. And when those conditions that support sadness change, then sadness changes, when we won't be sad in that moment. So part of nature, this term is, and I like it because it has these connotations of naturalness, of something that's not alien. Actually, it's just a naturally occurring, naturally arising, whatever it is. But part of this term is that we understand that this cause-effect process is not personal. It's an impersonal process. And it gets way more complicated when we take it personally. We take this impersonal process personally. We personalize whatever's arising. And using the same example, I'm so sad, or I'm such a sad person, or why am I sad? You know, all those things where we bring that I into what's happening. On a relative level, that can be helpful. It can be helpful, but it also has a certain sort of endlessness to it, sort of unanswerable questions. And the more sort of insightful, or the sort of more absolute approach is simply, this is an impersonal process. This is what's happening in the moment. And so Sayadaw's saying having that sort of attitude is really, really helpful in practice. And that's what we need to bring in along with awareness, is the attitude of this is not a personal process. This is something that's arising in the mind in the moment. So yeah, what helps us have that more impersonal relationship to what's happening, what helps us have this sort of simpler, aware relationship to experience. And this remembering nature is crucial. But there's another factor, and that's acceptance. Having a kindly, spacious acceptance of what's arising in the moment. It's already there, so we don't make a problem of something that's already arising in our experience. So there's an acceptance of, okay, so there's sadness there, or there's anxiety or grumpiness or boredom. And that acceptance comes along with some interest. Oh, there's joy in the mind. What were the conditions that brought about this particular mind state? That's one way that interest can manifest. It can manifest in the cause-effect process itself. What were the conditions that brought about this? Yeah. And already there you're introducing something different, the right sort of effort or energy along with the right mindfulness and right view. But yeah, the second thing is just bringing in and remembering to see experience as nature, or bringing in right view. So the right view, we talk about objects in experience, and that's really helpful. And this is like a supplementary way, bringing it quite explicitly, dropping in that perspective to remind the mind. This is nature arising, not personal. And that can be quite a relief to the mind, because that sort of complexity that the thinking around experience can bring quite a lot of suffering along with its wake, further suffering, second arrow suffering. So just to be with what's happening can be quite a relief. So we're not necessarily, you don't go digging around, if you like, to see, has the mind really accepted this? But just let that perspective, let the mind get used to that as a training perspective. Nature, impersonal. But there may be times when you can be clear that the mind is not accepting this, that you can notice some resistance, or if it's an unhappy mind state, then you can notice that growing, or maybe some conflict in the mind around that. So what you can do then is just turn the attention to that experience of conflict in the mind, or the mind fighting with itself. Or sometimes it's that the mind just can't land on the object. The resistance manifests in a sort of shying away from what's happening. Oh, that's interesting. That's what's happening in the mind in the moment. So we can notice that. So the idea or the object is that we keep knowing different experiences, different objects around what's happening. So we get a fuller picture of what's happening in the body-mind in that moment. And we want to be doing that, perhaps dropping in this perspective in all different situations. So I've been using examples where the mind is suffering more. But also happy states of mind where the attitude can turn into one of attachment or holding on. Or maybe neutral, just times when the mind is quite neutral. This is natural to the mind. And that can increase interest and also prevent us from making a problem out of having a mind where not much is happening in that moment, because it isn't a problem. It's not a problem what's happening. Okay, let's leave it there. If you'd like to set yourselves up to sit.